Well, good morning and welcome back to the Tin Barn. I'm Pragmatic Lee. Today we got a little project for you. Won't be any machining in this project. It's going to be a restoration project. Back in March, this is about the middle of July right now, and back in March I went to an auction, an on-site auction for a farm equipment primarily. Knew the man that was whose equipment was being sold. Also knew the auctioneer, which just happened to be his son. Auctioneer used to rent a building from me to run his auction house. But in any case, wasn't any farm equipment I was interested in, but there was one piece that I saw in his advertisements that really piqued my interest. I sent him a message and said, Greg, if I can't be there, put me in an X number of dollars on this item, but I'm going to try my best to be there. Well, it was kind of cool that morning when I got up and I started to just stay in the house. Then I decided, no, I'm gonna go on over there. It'll warm up once the sun gets up. And let me turn the camera around and I'll show you what I picked up. What I picked up was this Wilton Vise. As you can see, it's a Wilton bullet vise. It's in excellent condition, other than having a little rust on it. I'll go over some details, some other little nicks and dings in it with you in a minute. But as you can see from this picture, this is what it looked like when I got it. It does have the swivel base, which is kind of unusual. See a lot of guys restoring these Wilton vises that do not have the swivel base with it. This one's got the swivel base. So here's what it looks like after I did an initial strip down. I took it completely apart, stripped it down, and videoed that whole process. But if you watch my last video on the material stand for the saw, you know I had an issue in that video with this new wireless microphone picking up my music playing in the background. And all that video I shot on stripping this vise down and going over the particulars of it, the music was just way too loud. No way I could trim that out. So I'm going to take this vise apart again. I put it back together kind of loosely. I'm going to take it back apart again just for documentation purposes, and such that if anyone else is watching this later, you can get an idea of what the pieces are and the parts are to take one of these vices apart. The vise itself is one of the larger vices, with the jaws closed, from tip to tip is 18 inches. The jaws themselves are 4.5 inches wide. On the other side it's marked as a number 4, but the jaws are actually 4.5 inches wide. First thing I'm going to show you taking apart, these handles for the lock nuts, or for the swivel nuts, have just this little washer on the end down here, and it was pinged over. I ground that down just a little bit on that end where I could take that washer off. I get ready to put it back together. Of course, I'll put it in there and ping that down just enough to ping that back down. I may have to put this on the lathe, cut that shoulder down just a little bit. And these nuts are on both sides, of course. I'm going to go ahead and set it off the swivel base for now. When you set it off the swivel base, be careful that you don't lose this little piece right here. That little piece rides in the center, in the base itself, and will also ride in here. And that's what keeps it, that's what gives it its pivot point. The only markings on the base at all is a mold number, and it's the number 4. Looks like they might have been, it's definitely not a serial number because it's molded into it. It was not stamped in, but it has a number 4 right here. Other markings on the vise. On this side, of course, we have Wilton Chicago. From what I can read, I believe Wilton moved to Chicago or set up business in Chicago in 1942. And based on the stamp, date stamp underneath on the movable jaw, this vise was built in 1942. Marked USA. On the other side, we have the Wilton Chicago on this side as well, USA. Down here we have NO4. I'll see if I can zoom in a little bit on that. We have the number 4 there. So I'm certain this is what they were selling as a 4-inch vise. And up on the side of the fixed jaw, in the mold stamp, also a JC. I'd be very interested if anybody knows what that stood for, if it had a meaning, and if you could share it with me, I would greatly appreciate it. All right. To remove the removable jaw, there's this collar that goes around the screw. By the way, all the screws in this vise are the original screws for this collar and for the jaws. And I intend on putting them back in there. I've cleaned them up a little bit. After I take it apart this time, what I'm going to do is just use some degreaser on it again to be sure it's all clean. Polish up a little bit more on some of the pieces. Most of this stuff is I've already polished up and got ready to go. But we'll have this horseshoe collar that holds that in. Then the screw will come completely out. Screw is in excellent condition on this as well. It had a little caked up grease inside of it that I've got cleaned up. The handle is not bent at all. I was very, very pleased in that. The way these handles come out, this is actually a little ring ball that is driven onto the end of the handle and then pinged over. If you look real closely, you can make out that ring around here. On the other end, I've already removed that ball. What I did was grind that in just a little bit and then had to take a punch and hammer. Let's see if I can use the vise right quickly to remove that. So as you can see, this is turned down on the end of the handle. The ring is completely reusable. This side is flat, and this side has a little bit of a countersink into it, which the flat side of the ring will go back on the flat side of the handle, and then this will be pinged over again. And I'll try to show that process when I put it back together. Again, I may have to put this on the lathe and turn that shoulder down just a little bit there to take care of what I ground off the end, which was very little. So now the movable jaw comes out, and I will see if I can turn this around so that you can see the date code on it as well. As you can see, this is a month and a year, 2 of 46. Now, it's my understanding from what I can read and what I've picked up on some of the other restoration videos for these Wilton Vises, in particular Keith Rutger's restoration series. This is actually a date when the warranty expired, which was 4 years after the manufacturer. So that would indicate that this vise was built in February of 42. As I said earlier, Wilton set up shop in Chicago in 1942. So this has to be one of the first vises that was built. Just a brief little bit of history on the Wilton Vises. Wilton's original contract for these bullet vises was military only. That was their only customer. They sold to the military during World War II. When the war was over with, and the government sold these off as surplus, it more or less flooded the market with them and almost put Wilton out of business. But Wilton is obviously still in business today, still making vises. Don't know, there's no way in the world of knowing if this one ever got sold to the military, if it was in stock somewhere. Just no way of knowing. It would be nice to know the provenance of it, but that's impossible at this point in time. I will go back and check with the man that whose stuff was being auctioned off and see if he knows any of the history of it. But as right now, all I know is that date code and where I got it from. So there is the movable jaw. We'll clean this up a little bit more. So got a little bit of flash rust on some of this stuff. I'll clean that up and of course mask that before I paint it. The jaws, again, I was very pleased in their condition. Screws had to have just a little bit of cleanup. There's a little bit of boogering on the head, but not much. The jaws have an alignment pin in them and 2 1/4 screws. Now, on this jaw, this is the worst of the two of them, but you can see on the top of it right there, this is hardened steel, and there's been a little bit of chipping off the top of that jaw, but not the gripping surface. I'm going to continue. I'm going to put these jaws right back on. All right, so this is the movable jaw, completely disassembled. I can see in there now I've got a little bit more grease and old paint that I need to remove from in there. Same thing right here. There's a little bit of grease right there, right on. And this jaw as well has got just a couple, as you can see, a couple little chips out of the top of it, but the gripping surface is in excellent condition. I wonder if they will fit on. They may very well be reversible. If they are, I can put this, I can put the chip on the bottom side. I'll check that out later. All right, in the back of the bullet itself is a dust cover. To remove that dust cover, just need to insert some kind of little small rod through the nut in there. Try not to concentrate on one spot. Couple little dings in the bottom of that, but or in this, but it's obviously plenty usable just like it is. Now, to take the nut out of the end, there's 2 pins. There's a pin right here and a pin over here. I'll zoom in again. You can see right here, there's the circle of the pin. Once this hub was put into this, of course these are cast, and once that hub was put on there, it was actually ground down. There's a ground surface around here to make it flush. And that's really all the indicator that you will need when you put it back together, because it will only line up, these two surfaces will only line up with it in one position. These pins will be practically impossible to see to begin with. For one thing, they'll be covered in the original paint, and ever how many layers of paint might have been put on it between the time it was built and the time you get it. This one only had 2 layers of paint, the original gray paint, and at some point in time it had been painted black. But the way you can find the position of that hole, and to be sure that it is this style with the holes through the side, look inside the nut and you will see a hole in there. Measure that distance, approximate distance, and locate it over here, and that should help you find that nut or find that pin. The pin has got to go to the inside, and it very well will have 70 years of time to have been mated in there, so it won't go your first time quite that easy. Now, as you can see, it's down inside the nut. Be careful you don't drive it too far and start it in the corresponding hole on the other side. All right, I've got that started. Now what I'm going to do is take another punch and just turn that on the side and knock that down in there. There's the pin. Let me back out a little bit so that you can see the entire process for the next one. Now I'm just going to stand it up on the end and set this on the end of that pin once I know I've got it driven all the way through. But again, driven through but not started in the other side. There it comes out the bottom. Once you get those 2 pins out, this part of the housing back here, well, the nut itself, just reach on this end and push and the nut will come out. This is the nut. The only markings I have found on the nut itself is 750. Those are just mold numbers. Then this will come out. Remember, when you put it back in, line the holes up and fill across that surface. You see, if I turn it around here and line the holes up on this side, these surfaces don't line up at all right here. And the nut itself will only go in one way as well. So you shouldn't have to mark it. If you feel more comfortable putting you a witness mark on these pieces before you take them apart, that's perfectly fine. So that's all the pieces. I'm going to do a little bit more cleanup, and then we're going to see about painting it. All right, I got all the pieces degreased good with some acetone. Went back and washed everything with acetone, and any place where I saw any of the original paint left, put a wire brush on that and cleaned it up. I also got all the machine surfaces masked off with masking tape. The anvil side, the ends here where the jaws go, and of course this part of the barrel inside, jaws over there. The paint that I used, I wanted to try to get something that would match as close to what I could determine the original was without having paint mixed and that kind of thing. The closest match I could find to it was this Rust-Oleum, and it is 7786 smoke gray. That seems to have matched well. I'm going to let that this sit here and cure for a while. It's got two coats of paint on it now, so I'll let that get good, dry and good and hard. Probably leave it at least 24 hours before I start to handle it. Okay, the swivel base nuts, I got those cleaned up, got a little clear coat on that. I took one of the pins, carried it over to the lathe, and cut this shoulder back just a little bit. So I'm going to see now if I can put that back on there and see if I can peen that down. All right, that is on there good and strong now, good and solid. We'll do the same thing with the other one. Turn that shoulder down just a little bit, thread it through the nut. And it's sticking up just a little bit, so we'll peen it. And there we'll have that side. Now I'm ready to start on this, and I'm going to turn over to the lathe again and take just a little bit of this shoulder right here off, since I had to grind a little bit of that in to begin with. I'm over at the lathe now. I'm going to put the handle in. And again, take just a little bit off this shoulder. This should tell us if there's any bends at all in the handle. And it is running very true. Very pleased with that. I'm just using the parting tool just to take off about what I thought I may have removed with the Dremel when I was taking the ring off of that end. All right, I'll get camera turned back around and we'll see if we can get this ring on and get it pinged in place. Okay, before we put the ring back on the handle, it's obviously very important that we remember to thread it through the lead screw first. So, got that on there. Now what we'll do is, hopefully this ball peen hammer I have here is big enough to peen that down. If not, I'll have to go look in my larger one. Alright, I believe I'm going to have to see if I can find a little bit bigger hammer to peen that down with. My larger ball peen hammer, for whatever reason, is just not to be found. I know it was being used on another project outside of the shop. And it didn't get brought back, or either the gremlins come and got it again. So I used a claw hammer. I know, don't disown me for using a claw hammer. And I think I've pretty much got it. I've got it peened down all the way around now, as you can see. I'll just use this small ball peen that I've got here and just try to dress it up a little bit just to smooth that peening all down some. All right, that is the original peening. As you can see, there's a little ring around there. And here's the one I just did. It's not quite as clean, but give this one 75 years of use and it'll probably look like that. I'm ready to continue the reassembly. All the paint has had overnight to dry and feels good. Everything feels good on it as far as being dry. Before I get the whole housing put back together and it gets real heavy, I'm gonna go ahead and remount it onto the base here. And I'm gonna put just a little bit of this white lithium grease on the contact points on the base. It has an outer ring and an inner ring. And I think what I'm gonna do is go ahead and put just a little coat, put some on this base, and just spread a real thin coat just to prevent some the rust from building up on the non-contact points. I can clean off this excess off the outside once everything's put together. As I pointed out during the disassembly, there's this little cylinder piece that need to be careful and not lose it if you've still got your base. That mounts in there, and the hole spacing on that, these two holes are wider apart than these two. So I'm going to make a little assumption here. If anybody knows different, appreciate you letting me know, but I'm going to put these two closer holes underneath the jaw side itself, because I'm thinking that's where, if there's any hammering on the vise or whatever, it would need to be over these jaws that are closer together. All right, the fixed jaw is mounted back down to the base now. Now it's time to put the screw nut and the housing for the nut back in. And remember, when I took that apart, I said if you line these up, it should be only one place that will line up and be smooth. And I'm just using a drift punch on the other side here just to get it close. Now that can't go in all the way yet because it's got to go into the nut as well. And this is going to require a little touch-up paint on these. So after I get it all completely together, I'll carry it back out and give it just a little touch-up. There are these little bosses on the nut. There are indentions in here for those to fit in. So right-handed whirl, people. So now we're ready for the fixed jaw. The movable jaw. Tell you what, since this is a serviceable area, I'm going to use oil on that. Give it a good apple. Put plenty of oil inside the nut as well in there. And let's see how this does now. I was able to turn the jaws over. There's a little chip on this one on the top, but it's a whole lot better than the other side was. And I'm going to oil this down real good as well. And that's where our collar goes back on. very good. All right, what I'm going to do, got one more piece to put on here. And that's the dust cover. And I see plenty of oil made it all the way in. All right, I'm going to wipe it down good. I've seen a couple of places right up here next to this jaw where I didn't get it painted good. So I'm going to remask some of these machine surfaces here and where I did the detailing on here. And carry it out, give it a little touch-up paint. After that dries, I'll give it a clear coat and we'll come back and check out the finished product. Well, there's the finished product, folks. I am very pleased with it. As I said earlier, it's going to get used. It won't look like this long because it's going to get used for whatever need may come up here in the shop. As I said at the beginning of this video, I bought this at an auction for a retired farmer. He was retired, selling off his equipment. And as I said earlier, I know the man. Matter of fact, we're cousins several generations back. Honestly, I don't know his real name, but I always called him Buddy Braswell. And Mr. Braswell, I hope you're pleased with it. I hope you're, first off, pleased that I got it at the auction. And I hope you're pleased with the result of the restoration. I'm going to try to get word to you through Sissy or through your sons, and to be sure that you can see this video. And maybe if you know of any of the provenance of this vise, how long it's been, how long you had it, I'd be thrilled to learn that it went back a couple generations in your family. But either way, any news you have or any information you have whatsoever on this vise, I would be thrilled for you to share it with me. And as I say, I'll get the word, maybe try to get the word through Sissy, through Tim and Greg, and all this video that you can watch it, watch what's become of it. And then I encourage everyone to come back, stay tuned to this channel, because a vise this big is too heavy to sit on a wood workbench that's on a wood floor. So I'm going to build a pedestal that I think will complement this vise. So check back maybe in the next week, 10 days to my channel, and I'll have a video up of building a pedestal for this. So hope you've enjoyed this restoration, and we'll see you on the next video.